going to discuss about component interactions in Angular, and I have already created a basic application, and I have a component inside this as named as app component, and we have app module inside this, right? In app module we have our component registered as app component, and I have also running the component using ng start command and ng serve command. As you can see, we have our application here. So let's start by quickly creating some more components, right? So let's do this. Let's create one more terminal by clicking a plus button here, and let's start creating. So we'll use a command which is provided by Angular to quickly create components. Ng is for recognizing this is an Angular command, then G is for generating new thing, C is for component, so we want to generate a component, and then we can write the name of component. So for our case, let's say this component as B, so this guy will generate a new component called as B. As you can see, now B folder is present with B works, and in module B component is also registered. So these all things are done automatically by Angular. So this is quite good, and you can use up key in terminal if you don't know. Quickly go to previous command, and I just want to generate a new component C, and voila, we have a C component. Now some people, I know this is very basic thing, but some people sometimes get confused. How do I create child parent relationship in Angular? Like, how can I say something is a child component for a parent? The concept is very clear. You can have nested child parent, or I don't know how many levels of things using HTML for each component inside Angular. Like, if you just say here the selector name of P component. So what do I mean by selector name? When you see a folder of which Angular has generated, right? So inside this the main guy is this TS file, TypeScript file, which contains the component declaration. So this is the component which is created, and inside this is the main file. b.component.ts is the main file, and you basically can you have to use these selectors to create different kind of nesting. So let's consider if we want to have two child components inside a parent, we'll simply write here the name of selector app B. That's it. That's it. We just created an hierarchy in application. Now you can see that inside component A we have B works, and similarly we can have another component which we have created, that is app C, and if we save it, this will just simply create C component. So now we have a parent and two child inside it. Now let's discuss about communication, right? How does information is sent from parent to child, and most importantly, why? In many cases you might have parent-child relationship in such a way that child is just used to show a small piece of information from parent. Parent did a server call to get dynamic data, and then child would simply go ahead and show that data to user. Data is present in parent component, and it just wants to pass information inside child. How would you achieve that? Let's take B component for an example. We can simply achieve it by saying input, and then just writing a name kind of input we want to take. So let's say in, which is type of string. So we'll simply say that we have a component property here, and we can have the values as string or undefined in it. And in HTML we simply want to showcase that in works, right? So we'll simply have in printed here in our component. Now from parent component you want to pass some information, so we can simply say the name of property which you wrote as input and the value in it, sent from parent. and that's it. That simply creates a parent-child component interaction where a piece of information was sent from parent to child component. Now, what if your child components want to send some information back to parent? Why would it? Which cases, which real life scenario can be um, where it is? What kind of scenario there can be where this is required? To be very frank about it, it generally happens when you have some kind of event captured through keyboard or mouse, and that information you want to send back to parent. Like, let's say we have a button inside C, right? Let's say we have a button, and we just want to have click me, and then we just handle the click event, right? Do you know that this is kind of way where events are passed back to by Angular to, and then we'll pass it to something called as handle click. Now we have to declare this method in our TS file, and then now what we'll do is we'll mark something as output, which is provided by Angular, and we'll say that button clicked. Let's say just name something so that we can follow it up. Button clicked, and that we can declare it as event emitter. Right? And you can write equals to name event emitter. And then we can simply write this dot button clicked dot emit, and then we can simply give child. Now parent component, as we did here where we sent information from parent to child, we can get information from child to parent using the name which we gave there. So we gave the name as button clicked. So let's copy this, go to parent, and this is an event, right? This is something which child is firing and parent has to consume. So it will be something like click, which you did in a button, and then you have to handle child here, right? And let's say we'll just write handle child in parent TS file, handle child, and then we want to maybe change the title. Let's say title was nothing received yet, and then we can write here, let me start title child send click event. And even let's start with this first, and then we'll even show that how we can utilize the data which was sent from child. So in HTML we have to note that point. So let's say we'll add a paragraph and simply bind this title variable from here, right? We'll just simply say copy and paste here. Right, that's it. So once we save it, we'll go to our widget file. So we also want to see what went wrong in this thing. So this is saying cannot find declare. So sometimes Angular does weird things. Event emitter is not taken correctly. So we'll go here, click on the bulb, and we'll get event emitter from Angular instead. We'll see that now compilation has been successful. I'll go to Safari, and as you saw that this information was sent from parent. When we click, then we can see that the child sent click event. Now I want to send something specific. I want to send that I want aloha from here, from a child C where the button was clicked. Then we'll go into parent, and since this is passing some information, you can pass this as a part of event, and then you can consume this data from child, and we know that it is going to be in string, so we can simply say this dot title equals to data from child, and then we save all files. And with this, now when I click this, we see that the information which we passed from child is received in parent. So this is one kind of communication. But what if you have very complicated architecture where you have child and there are multiple childs inside that? So let's now quickly create few more child components. Okay, we have C, let's create D, then let's create E, then let's create G, and then let's create H. So now we have a lot of components, right? For reference, let's create an image how our components will be. So we have A, B, and then we are going to have D and E inside B, and then F and G inside this. So I think I missed F. Alright, anyways, we'll have G and H inside that. Anyway, so inside B we are going to have E and F, so let's simply add that. Add D and app E, and inside C component we are going to have two more guys. Let's say app G and app H. Simple enough. So let's save all files, and voila, if we don't have any compilation error, we are good to go. So now let's remove some piece of code from here so that becomes easier to understand. So let's remove let's comment out this thing for now, and we'll remove the piece of code where we just want to print this information. So we'll just have B works, and in C we'll keep this thing for now. Let's see now. So basically B has D and E, and after C you can see G and H are present. So these are the parent-child hierarchies. Okay, so what do we do when we have this kind of complex infrastructure or complex component arrangement, when we have a lot of things? So right now you only see things in two levels, right, where you are A, B and C. So basically there is one level of child hierarchy, and then there is second one. What if there are 20 and a button is present inside D but the effect should be shown in G? How do you transfer information from here to here? There is one way people will say that okay, I can use output, then output, and again input, and again input, as we were using between parent and child. But this seems really unnecessary, and this is where services in Angular come into picture. Let's quickly solve this, right? So instead of creating component now, so and G was for Angular, G was for generating things, S is for service. So we are going to create service called as whiteboard. Let's name it whiteboard, and let's quickly create whiteboard service as we have here, and it is already injected. So inside this, what we want to do is, as our image says, we want to have a button inside D, right? So let's say this is button, and the output should be shown in G. So let's change code according to that. Button should be inside D, and currently button was inside C. So let's say we'll remove from here, we'll move it to D, that button. So now button is present inside D, and output should be shown in, maybe let's say H at the end component, right? So this will have simply button clicked, and we will simply say this component to have a value button clicked, not yet clicked, and then we want to say in D component as handle click. We want to add this piece of code, otherwise there will be compilation errors. So now what to do, how to transfer information from D to H. That's what I was saying. We will use service. Now service is something which is available throughout our all components, and if you have used Angular, you know that how you can import service. It can be done private, then name of service, any name you can give, whiteboard let's say, and then you simply write whiteboard service, and that's it. Your service is included in it. In service you can write a method where you say handle click, right? And inside this you can simply add new data. Let's say we'll send a string there, and from D you can obviously import that service again. Private whiteboard and whiteboard service, and then you can simply call handle. Whenever handle click is called, you can say whiteboard dot handle click. Inside this, let's create a small iterator which will maintain how many times button was clicked. Count equals to 0, and then we can write simply count plus plus. We are increasing count plus plus, and then we are just sending this information as a button was clicked plus this dot count plus times, right? You can do something like this. And in H component, where we want to consume it, we have not reached to that place yet. So in this one, new data. Now how do we transfer? We have now transferred information from button click to whiteboard service. Now we have to pass information from whiteboard service to G. Now as you remember, when we were handling clicks, right, we had event emitter. Event emitter is nothing but a kind of observable which code automatically subscribes to. So you can simply write something as private a subject which will publish information. So we'll say data publisher, and that we can declare as a subject, right? And we will give a type of string. This will send out a string information outside, and we'll have a public part which can be subscribed to. So data publisher dollar, and then data publisher this dot data publisher dot as a observable. So this guy can be visible outside, will be visible outside, and this guy will be only internally accessible. We'll see in a moment why that is so. So we'll write data publisher dot next. This dot next thing, right, is the reason why we want to keep our subject as internal, and we only want public places or people who are going to use this service to only consume it, only subscribe to it. We don't want different components to fire. This is a control mechanism. You can have a choice of your own. If you want different components to fire within themselves, you can do that, but it's difficult to manage later that who actually fired it. Through methods you can actually have some control. You can log it that someone called this guy, and then you can basically control where the information is coming from. Generally that is what is followed as a standard. So our D component called handle click, and then our publisher simply said that I want to emit that data, new data. Now H component is the one who has to consume it. I mean, edge component wants to react on that information. So whenever data is published, so we wrote that whiteboard service we injected in this component, and whenever data is published, we would simply subscribe to that information, new data, and then we just want to change this dot button, click information with new data. We want to replace that, and that's it. I hope we don't have any compilation error. Right, our application started. Just a second. Our application started. So whenever you click here, so you can see that now information from D is reaching to G, H component. So as many times you click here, this information will be updated every time. So yeah, that's the two-way how component interaction happens. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you liked it, you can put a thumbs up. This is something which something I'm new to, but just to add one more point for this is that button click events, right? Whatever we are doing is the way which we interacted using whiteboard is something you will have to use. In most cases we use input and output only for the components which are dumb, which are just for presenting information, which don't have that much complicated business logic. But as soon as your components and code becomes more advanced, you can create services, even you can create isolated services in your modules which can communicate with each other, and not those services need not be provided in root or the whole application. There can be services which can be isolated only to certain components, and you can use services to transfer information from one to another. So yeah, thank you for watching. Bye bye.